Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on why do drug launches fail. We're excited to have you join us today for an important topic that deserves our attention, right? As the successful launch of a new drug is critical not only for the pharmaceutical company, if you work for one, but also for the patients, right? The healthcare providers who really rely on these new treatments. Now, as you all join, please feel free to introduce yourself as usual into the chat and let us know where you're tuning in from. We usually have attendees joining us from all over the world and are really thrilled to have such a diverse audience that's participating in today's conversation. While you leave into the chat your name and where you're from, I will allow a pause for about 1 to 2 minutes just to allow attendees to join in, and we'll get started then. A lot of welcomes. I see plenty of familiar names as well from our previous webinars. I see a lot of East Coast titles. All right, thank you all for the warm introductions as you leave these into the chat. The chat you just entered into is also where you should leave questions throughout today's webinar. We will try our best to answer as many as we can at the end today, at the conclusion of today's webinar. Just by way of introduction, my name is Kiana Dixon. I am the pharmacist and associate director of educational programs here at the ACMA, or the Accreditation Council for Medical Affairs. And I will act as your host or your moderator this afternoon. Through this webinar, our goal is to unpack the key factors that contribute to unsuccessful drug launches and provide actionable insights to help ensure future launch success, especially if you are working within these roles within a pharmaceutical organization. To help us explore these topics, I'm honored to be joined by two expert speakers. We have Steve Fields, a prior auth certified specialist and vice president of field access and reimbursement, as well as Ebtehal Madi, a board certified medical affairs specialist and global medical collaboration network enabler. Ebby and Steve, thank you both for being here today. Please take a moment to introduce and share a bit about yourself for our attendees to learn more about you today.
Thank you, Kiana. Thanks for the opportunity, and I'm really a pleasure to be here with you all. So let me quickly introduce myself. I'm a pharmacist with over 11 years of experience in pharmaceutical industry. I have held different roles, started my career as a medical representative, then I moved to the medical affairs at an MSL, medical manager, and also joining the global team as a medical scientific communications leader. And as Kiana mentioned, I now on the role of the Global Medical Collaboration Network Enabler, which is contributing significantly in the product launches and fostering global collaborations. May I add something, Kiana, on the, I wanted to make sure that everyone knows that the views and opinions I will be sharing today are my own and do not represent my employer. So looking forward to our discussions, and feel free to ask as many questions as you might have.
Hey everybody, I'm Steve Fields. I'm the Vice President Field Access and Reimbursement for Inizio Engage, and I too will be sharing my own opinions and not those of my employer. I've been in the industry roughly about 35 years. I hate saying it because the gray is very clear in my beard. I've done just about everything in the commercial space, sales leadership, market access, field reimbursement leadership, hub services. So I come with a broad commercial background, training and development, and everything like that. So I really am excited about this topic. I've seen both the good and the bad. I've launched over 21 products in my career. I kind of counted up the other day. So this is a really important product, and I think it's changing a lot. Sometimes slower than I think Maddie and I both would like for it to change. But there definitely have been some evolution of launch products. So thank you so much. And I really want to thank ACMA for allowing both Maddie and I to share our experiences live with everybody online. Thank you.
Thank you both. I'm really excited. As you all can hear, we have plenty of experience here joining us in today's discussion, both geographically So we have experience from not only here in the US, but from global experience for global markets, as well as experience spanning across the pipeline of a traditional drug's life cycle, which we'll get into today. The importance of today's webinar, when we discuss drug launches, unfortunately, they often fall short of expectations. Industry research suggests that up to 60% of new drug launches fail to meet their year one sales target. Now, the reasons behind these failures are very complex. They're spanning strategic, operational, cross-functional challenges. And our expert speakers today will share their experiences, their best practices covering the entire drug lifecycle, from research and development to medical affairs to that critical commercialization phase as well. By the end of today's session, as we go through today's agenda, our goal is for you to walk away with a deeper understanding of the common pitfalls to avoid, right, as well as those cross-functional strategies to really drive launch readiness and engagement with our key stakeholders. So to get us started, let's first review a typical pharma organization structure. A pharmaceutical company usually strategically aligns their teams that follow the life cycle of a drug or a product. And if we follow from time of conception of a drug, that product undergoes plenty of clinical trials in that research and development stage, and then it works its way through the pipeline, through regulatory approval, and again, to commercialization. And this is true across the globe. Right? This pipeline usually is structured around these three main pillars of team. We have research and development, medical affairs, as well as commercial. And throughout today's webinar, we will take a look at each of these pillars, but we will also take a look at the journey of teamwork and collaboration between all three pillars as well, and discussing why some drug launches fail, right? And more importantly, how to prevent that from happening. So let's first take a look at the main pillars that we previously introduced. I'll direct this question to you, Evie. In your words, what is the role or the purpose of the research and development team in a product's lifecycle?
I would say they are responsible for discovering and developing new drugs that address unique and unmet medical needs. Through rigorous preclinical and clinical research, actually they aim to establish safety, efficacy, and appropriate dosage and route of administration of these drugs. Eventually, this should be able to achieve regulatory approvals and also improve patient outcomes.
And throughout today's webinar, we'll dive in a little bit more as to what these activities and responsibilities of this team and how they work with other teams like medical affairs and commercial, how they work together to better prepare for pre-launch as well as launch at this research and development stage. Now moving forward to that second pillar, medical affairs. This team plays a critical bridging role between clinical development and commercialization. They lead key activities across the product's lifecycle, from those late-stage trials to publication planning, to the education of both external stakeholders like HCPs or healthcare providers, and also our internal stakeholders, like sales and commercial teams. We'll also discuss this more in detail later this afternoon. So Steve, I'll direct my next question to you. Since you're directly tied to the commercial team, how would you describe the role or purpose of the commercial and market access team in a product lifecycle?
Well, of course, with your market access team, it's to gain coverage, insurance coverage, the most smooth way possible with the least amount of burden on the patient or on the provider's office to get it approved. And then from there, the commercial team is to promote the brand, is to promote the appropriate patient at the appropriate time. And a lot of times, then you want to make sure and really promote it to the appropriate payer. That's the other piece of the market that's really changed is you want to make sure that you always include the payer perspective as well. So that's been a constant battle that we're looking at within the U.S. marketplace.
And that payer conversation is really huge, I'd say, especially as of late, because of the hot topic of drug pricing. Right? This is a common obstacle, a common discussion And throughout today's webinar, what I've already learned from Steve and both Abby in that commercial role and discussion with payer organizations is really important, starting from the very beginning. And now that we've reviewed these three main pillars of a product's life cycle, my question to both of your speakers, now that the attendees are more aware of your current role and your setting in this pipeline, at which stage through research and development and commercial are you usually first notified that a new drug is coming through the pipeline for market approval?
I can jump in.
Yeah.
Okay. So, like in my current role, I would say that I'm notified early in the development phase, as seen here at the stage A. So around like phase 2, sometimes earlier in the phase 1. But in my previous roles, to be honest, that I would like more involved in or notified in the phase 3. So the early, the better. So early notification is really key, to be honest. This will allow for proactive alignment on the strategies, also coordination of the essential pre-launch activities needed, TE engagement, and also like the key stakeholders engagement, as Steve mentioned, payers, PACs, etc. So ensuring that the cross-functional teams are involved early helps us prepare properly to meet the regulatory and also the market needs effectively.
Yeah, no, I would add to that as well. This is evolving in the marketplace, because I think more times, well, there's more times that you're seeing actually HEOR data and patient outcome data built into the actual clinical trials, and I think that is really important, because a value proposition is really something a payer will make decisions on. So the more that we can have those type of outcomes, economic outcomes, patient burden outcomes, the more that we can have that built into the clinical trials, it paints a better picture for actually where it's going to fit into the treatment algorithms within a payer. And I think that's starting to evolve more. And I think over time you'll see that as being somewhat of a standard operating procedure, maybe even as early as phase 2 clinical trials, somewhere along those lines. But definitely I'd like to see it become like that standard. And there's a number of people I've talked to, especially in rare disease and some of the more expensive disease states. They really need to make sure that they understand what that value is to the patient, and also the unmet need that's economically as well as medically.
Hearing both of your answers, you're mentioning starting from the very beginning within your involvement, especially discussing market access and payer organizations. Is this common among all therapeutic areas and all pharma organizations from your experience, or does that vary?
I think it's becoming more, you're seeing more of it as far as starting in the payer analytics and the pricing earlier in the development phase. And again, the HEOR is a lot more early than it used to be. It used to be they waited until launch. A lot more was post-launch. So I think it's becoming more of a standard. Maddie, you could probably speak to that.
Yeah, I would say the same. Like it's like building on all the learnings across the previous launches. There are like lots to like do, and that's what the trend is now. Like trying to involve everyone, cross-functional teams on board early as possible, because definitely this will tackle the challenges and the gaps that pop up afterwards across the life cycle of the product.
Yeah, Maddie and I were talking earlier today, and I think it's important that you look at the diversity of clinical trials and the diverse patient populations. You really have to start looking at that and weighing out what those economic burdens are going to be on that underserved population. And that's really something that we're starting to see a lot more, and we need to continue to see that.
Yeah.
I'm seeing some in the chat already agreeing that market access should be contemplated as early as possible. And as we go through in our webinar's agenda today, we will go through each stage, starting with research and development, and we will discuss these strategies such as market access, so we can get a bit more insight as to what that looks like at these early stages. My next question to you both is, when we're discussing that research and development stage, right, that stage A in our workflow, which teams are crucial for success at this stage for clinical trial recruitment, for research and development?
I can bring the medical perspective here, Steve, and you can add accordingly. So here, I think collaboration between the clinical development teams who designs and oversees the trials, clinical operations teams who are like managing the day-to-day execution of the clinical trials, medical affairs as well, bringing the medical insights and making sure that there is established HCP engagement plans in place. Also adding to this, the patient partnership team, like bringing the patient voices and adding to or plus one, Steve, on the part of the inclusive research. This is a part that is really crucial and haven't been there before, and it's now becoming a trend and a key factor for the success of product launches. And also the study design, like the patient voices will help to develop an appealing study design that will overcome the recruitment challenges afterwards, the retention challenges, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Interesting.
This is from the medical point of view, but Steve, you can add yours.
Yeah, I think from the from market access, there of course your health and economic outcomes research needs to be done as soon as possible, so you understand what that might look like in the marketplace for patients and the burden patients might face. Payer analytics teams that both at pricing and then market uptake, and then starting to have potentially some framework discussions with actual payers of what this therapy might be, what the unmet need might be, and stuff like that. The other thing I think is really important is starting to engage with advocacy groups, especially in the U.S. I mean, Abby and I both come out of the MS world in different parts of our careers, and the MS societies really influence a lot of payer policies and a lot of uptake within the patient population. So I think beginning to talk to advocacy groups, even at this point, is probably a fair thing to be able to do.
And when building those relationships with those patient advocacy groups, what is your key messaging here? Is it for, or your key goals, is it for the end goal of those payer organization relationships as well? Or are they assisting in, because Abby mentioned this as well, are they also assisting in clinical trial protocol building as well?
Abby, go ahead.
I would say it's everything. Like it's end to end, like bringing their voices and like having this partnership in place established will help all across the life cycle of the product. So it's not specific step that we want to focus on or milestone that we want to focus on, and this is okay, sorry, your work is done at this point of time, and then we will move ahead with other stakeholders. So yeah, I would say that's across the journey.
Yeah, that is the relationship with advocacy groups is definitely ongoing from pre-launch to launch to having post-launch. It definitely is a partnership that if you have well-established advocacy groups, especially in rare disease, specialty diseases, it's really important that you help them, because that's the voice of the patient, and that's a lot of times your payers need to hear that voice of the patient when it comes to coverage. So I've seen it numerous times.
Yeah.
And from my perspective of relationship building, as soon as I think of relationship building within pharma, my mind immediately goes to medical, right? Medical affairs and MSLs. Are those the main team members that are interacting and building those relationships, and then they bring in market access team members as well? Or is this more a collaborative effort where there is a market access representative, a medical affairs representative as well, and they're all meeting in to build that relationship with a particular advocacy group?
I would say it generally it's company to company, but I would say best demonstrated practice would be in collaboration. I think that's what Maddie and I would both always agree to, that you need to have partners on both. You need to be looking at the economics and the economic forecasting, as well as that value prop. And then you need to support that through medical, through your potential MSLs or your study design. So, Maddie, anything to add to that?
Yeah, everything is interconnected, I would say, complementing each other's, and like it's not about like this is the team where should be more leading in this stage and then disappears. I don't think that this should be the case. Yeah, I would insist that we shouldn't be like working in silo at all.
Mm.
This is really key for to plan for success.
And that's a perfect introduction really into our next conversation when we discuss research and development and establishing that cross-functional collaboration across the multiple teams. To both of you, how does the research and development team establish a foundation for this cross-functional collaboration with other teams like medical affairs and commercial to support that smoother transition?
So they should, like R&D should establish this kind of collaboration foundation early, as we mentioned before, and it should be continuous with all cross-functional teams. So it's not specified to medical affairs only or commercial team only. So everyone, whoever is involved in the life cycle of the disease area and the product should be involved in this foundation. In these engagements, actually, the R&D team should be like sharing the critical data, the insights that they have in place from the preclinical and clinical trials, because this is crucial to keep everyone informed, to be able to prepare for a successful launch and pre-launch, like the pre-launch readiness as well. Yeah, so having this kind of an integrated strategy in place, incorporating like different perspectives, commercial, medical, scientific, is key.
Yeah, I would say the key, and I agree with Maddie, it needs to be continual and it needs to be as early as possible. When you look at a product, you want to look at things such as like your patient services. What services are you gonna put around a product? It might be nursing, because there might be education involved with administration. There might be education involved with testing. You might have different reimbursement structures. So you're looking at potentially a field reimbursement team, your hub team, in all the different types of supports and copay. And you always have to think about the product's gross to net. That's the profitability. And a lot of times, we need to also consider that you can't overspend on the services. So it's a balancing act between the clinical and then your commercial when it comes to market. So it's both.
Zooming in more on the commercial team's perspective, specifically in this stage of research and development, what pre-launch activities or responsibilities does the commercial team take to secure that favorable market access and payer coverage for the product?
Well, a lot of times you do, payer and health system interviews prior to launch, and they really just talk about the general concept of your market awareness and the disease state awareness. A lot of times your MSLs work hand in hand in that regard with the payer and health systems. CAMs and FRM teams might be profiling your key accounts, such if it's a center of excellence, and how do you start to deal with that. Pricing is a big part of what the early part of pre-launch is. And then last thing, it's distribution. How are you going to distribute the product? Where is it going to be a limited distribution? If the product needs cold chain, all that stuff starts to really think about it. So it's anywhere from 12 to 24 months, to be honest with you, ahead of a launch. They have to start laying a lot of this groundwork. A friend of mine starting market research almost 2 years prior to the potential launch of their drug, and they're starting the HEOR work. So it needs to be really ahead of time to form that value proposition and how they're going to bring it into the marketplace. Abby, you want to add something to that?
Actually, you captured everything. I don't know if the positioning part is like might not be repetitive here. Also, the marketers works on the product positioning, and I think it's also really important to be able to make things clear or differentiate actually the drug in the market and highlighting its added value versus or over the existing treatments. And like collaboration also is key across different teams. So it's like, again, it's interconnected. It is cross-functional mindset approaches is key. Yeah.
I have a question to you within your global role, for example, because when you're dealing with global markets and you have multiple different markets and different economic structures in those markets, how difficult is it, or is it as difficult when it comes to changing your messaging? Is the messaging the exact same is the messaging the exact same across all markets globally, or does that change depending on what that market or that economic model may look like in that particular region?
So in my situation and experience, I would say that whatever the scientific messaging is developed by the global team, this should be taken care of on the local level. So affiliates should be localizing the messaging based on their local market dynamics and needs. But there is like the message from the global developed, it's factoring in the different market dynamics, the needs, the insights from the different and key stakeholders all across the globe. And then afterwards, the global key scientific messages is there. And then, as I told you, it is localized based on each country needs and dynamics. So, yeah.
I would add that when you're looking at the reimbursement as well, every country, a lot of the countries, especially ex-US, they're very different. They're different delivery mechanisms. They're different approval mechanisms. So it's definitely different on a global level. I mean, I would suggest probably, Ebby, it's almost like country to country to country. You have to go through their processes. So it's a very interesting model.
So when it comes, sorry, Kiana, adding to this, like it is there, like the scientific messages is there because the data will not be changing from one country to another, but the implementation should be tailored according to the needs and interests from this market and this stakeholder. So this kind of tailoring, this would be taken country by country level.
And within that, is there a need for multiple HEOR or pharmacoeconomic models based on those particular regions, or do you just tailor it to that particular market?
I would say you would do it very differently across every region. I mean, populations can respond to certain products certain ways. I would leave it at that. It's really individual, country to country. I would leave it at that.
Same here. Yeah, it will be different. We shouldn't be concluding that it's the same everywhere across the globe. So yeah, it's individual.
And as we're having this discussion and this need for tailored messaging, the need for tailoring studies, it really explains even more why the budget or what we're seeing as the huge number as the cost of product development is so high now in 2024, right? We're tailoring it and it's not the same across the board. That takes time, that takes resources, increasing that number. So now let's move from research and development to medical affairs, the next pillar in this pipeline of a product. Which specific pre-launch activities does the medical affairs team specifically take to build awareness and excitement among HCPs and stakeholders if that's their main role within the organization?
I think that's like lots of pre-launch activities, but if I'm bucketing them in terms of educational, for example, because this is key, sharing and disseminating the data of the product through different setups and formats, one-on-one, group meetings, webinars, Congress symposia. This is one thing. And another thing is around that medical affairs also should develop the publication plan, having integrated evidence plan, and also this kind of mentioned before, like the tailored approach when it comes to the engagement with the disease area communities. So whatever or wherever we are in the disease area life cycle, there might be a great need to have an advisory board, steering committee meetings, direct consultations with our HCPs, payers, having the patient advocacy groups in place that we have been discussing earlier. MSL's for sure engagement plan is key because this will be widening our reach and scope to our HCPs. But most importantly is making sure that the insights and the feedbacks received are not flying in the air. They should be integrated into the strategies and the communication plan. Making sure that we are also tackling the needs and the expectations of the stakeholders to support the successful product launch.
I'd say that this is almost the same thing with commercial. I mean, you're doing a lot of advisory boards, you're doing a lot of steering committees and talking to thought leaders about not only about how they're going to institute the product, but how they're going to work with payers of getting access to the product. Because one of your biggest advocates is the prescribing physician. So it's really important. The other place that's important are integrated health systems, because they almost function as a place on their own, and that they have different goals depending on the health system, and they might look at one product one way and look at a different product another way. So it also includes those individual health systems, which is something that's important.
Well, some of those activities that you both have mentioned, right? Advisory boards, one-on-one meetings with HCPs, insight gatherings, how to do that market research within the medical affairs team. We work with over 250 pharma companies to credential their entire medical affairs teams for these exact reasons, right? Because in BCMAS, we cover these specific aspects. We cover these aspects again, like ad boards, clinical trial analysis, HEOR studies, how to work with market access teams in order to build up those medical affairs team capabilities so that they are really moving the needle in that medical operations strategy, the overall medical strategy, in order to have and make those steps towards a successful launch. Moving from medical affairs to our next pillar, just for the sake of time, what are the responsibilities at launch, right? Once a product has been approved and it's ready to hit the market, at this stage and post-launch, what are those responsibilities of the commercial team?
Yeah, and I answered this question a little bit differently, because I kind of look at the entire, not only the market access team, but your commercial team as well. And I think these are really important assets to have. So number one, it's a clear value proposition of the product, and being able to go out into the marketplace and have those discussions. And they need to be aligned to the unmet needs, and they need to be talking about the ideal patient types that this drug is gonna help with. Second thing is meaningful patient support services. Now, what do I mean by meaningful? It needs to be something patients actually need. It just doesn't have to be, a standard copay, standard free goods. It needs to be what the patients actually need, and it needs to be aligned to both the clinical and economic needs. And the other thing, it needs to be easy to access. Patient support services need to be centralized, and they really need to be where the patients can get to them for the greatest amount of support. And the last thing that I'm a big believer on, incentive drives behavior. So when you're talking about field sales teams, market access teams, you need to align incentives, meaning the behaviors that you want into a sales and a leadership organization, they're completely carried across the entire organization. Abby, you want to add anything about that? We talked a little bit about that.
Actually, I will bring also the medical affairs perspective here. I would say the stage of launch and post-launch, they are responsible for the ongoing education and training. In this aspect, HCPs should be kept informed and on top of the value of the drug and the risk benefit profile of it, the real world evidence and data generation, and integration for sure, stakeholders insights gathering, because this definitely will be informing the strategy and adjusting the strategy as well. Also, what is crucial here is sustaining partnership in an end-to-end. So from clinical trials to clinical practice, so every way across the journey, there should be a collaborative partnership in place, sustained.
When we discuss those collaborative partnerships, Steve, you mentioned patient support services. And to me, patient support services is the collaborative relationship between the pharma organization and the patients or their providers. What are these teams, or what do these services look like? Are they personnel, team members, or are they materials, brochures?
Well, it's kind of both, and I would say that's even evolved into more technology as well. I think number one, it's things like copay support, it's hub support, because a lot of times you need support with with the patient's approvals, the patient's access journey, and then you have the nursing programs that do drug administration and stuff along those lines. So it can be a number of different things, Kian, and I think that again, it's really important that you tailor those programs to the needs of the patients. And that's super important. When Abby said carrying the insights across, that's super important prior to launch, to have those insights so you can create meaningful patient engagement or patient support services so that patients don't feel left behind. I'll stop there. I could go about a million different ways with that one. So Abby, you want to add anything?
Actually, no, you covered it all. And it will be different also from one market to another.
Yeah.
It is broad when it comes to the patient support services, from educational materials to beyond, like digital tools, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Steve mentioned some of those resources to patients, meeting them where they are, essentially giving them resources of what they need. When discussing with pharma companies, especially market access teams, a very common role that I hear discussed is FRMs, those field reimbursement managers that really help the patients and their providers provide access to their medications with any obstacles that may occur in that journey, including prior authorizations. And Steve today, he is PACS certified, as well as many other field reimbursement managers across the US. This is another program that the ACMA provides specifically for the commercial team. Many commercial market access field reimbursement manager teams, they would like to certify their entire field reimbursement team specifically for the education that PACS provides surrounding prior authorizations, seeing the perspective of the provider and the pharmacy when it comes to overcoming those obstacles such as prior authorizations in order to have a better post-launch practice or journey for those patients. We discussed throughout cross-functional collaboration pretty often throughout today's webinar. And this slide that we all see is really meant to be a summary, right? And my question to both of you is specifically which strategies are used to align the medical affairs and commercial teams, or even research and development, right, on the drug's key messages, those marketing materials, those launch tactics. Which strategies do you put in place to make sure that they all stay aligned?
I can jump in here. Yeah. Like there are like no like right answer here, but based on my experience is having like setups where the teams are co-creating this together, trusting that everyone would bring their expertise and add value. So the base is the trust that everyone is coming with good intentions to plan for success through these forums. Definitely, like we're talking about the regular communication, having this an open channel of communication and collaboration to make sure that everyone is informed. And nowadays, digital tools are heavily used in pharma industry to be able to make things easier, and also make the decision-making process also is getting easier and faster. I would say also understanding the role and responsibility of each of the team members, and having this kind of integrated planning. It is not about the commercial plan, medical plan, R&D plan. It is an integrated plan in an end-to-end fashion. We have been using currently like the outcome-based planning. And this is like, based on my experience, it's really cool because we are also bringing the outside in thinking. How can we integrate the insights that we are gathering all along into our strategies? And it's time frame, clear outcomes, where also everyone is aware, how can we measure the success of delivering these outcomes? Yeah, this is reflecting on my experience and how I see the strategies to make a successful launch.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo exactly, Abby. I think that you need to bring every important stakeholder into the process as early as you possibly can, because a lot of times there's you have different perspectives, and sometimes medical affairs has a very unique perspective, and marketing, we don't see that, or maybe market access doesn't see that. And it's really important to get everybody in the room that's a major stakeholder, and I'd say probably steering committees early on in the process. And then as you come along, you still want to have different input from your different key stakeholders. And then I think the other key stakeholder is absolutely the patients. I think the patient is really important, that we bring the patient into the discussions as soon as we possibly can, because it's their life. They manage the process. Some of you know that I just recently went through a pretty life-changing diagnosis, and the patient's really important. It's important to give that observation about what a patient's going through. And I've seen that more than I had hoped to, but it really is something that's super important, that we listen to those patients and what their lives are like on the therapy, or what the disease process might look like, because we could really adjust to really meet that patient's needs a lot more.
What I'm hearing the most is within any team, right? And I think Abby mentioned this earlier, is avoiding working in silos. Or you can be an expert in your area, but until you collaborate, align your incentives with other teams, with the patients, you're really working towards nothing, right? We have to keep in mind that the patient is the target, the goal of everything that we're working on. And at the start of today's webinar, this is how we first presented the pipeline or the journey of a prescription or of a drug through launch. Right, it's more straightforward when we hear the words end to end. It's a beginning and then there's an ending. But after my conversation with the speakers, this traditional or maybe outdated thinking of a drug's life cycle through launch looks more like this, right? It's more integrated. We bring in a commercial from the very beginning, and there's constant communication through these white loops, through these white journeys from research and development through commercial. Again, and always keeping that patient's perspective or patient's voice in mind as well. Just to summarize, right, we mentioned all of the great strategies to use, but I know throughout both of your experiences, you have also seen a few pitfalls, right? Some of those red flags that you may see from the very beginning that may cause a launch to fail. And so overall to you, which factors do you say are key pitfalls or really big red flags to you that a drug launch may fail?
Go ahead, Abby.
Yeah, the winner today, and we have touched on this several times, is the lack of cross-functional alignment. The working in siloed will lead into misaligned strategies. So this is one of the key pitfalls here. Also, insufficient market understanding. We are not understanding what are the market needs, what are the different market dynamics. This also definitely could be one of the potential pitfalls. Market access, delaying the market access thing here, failing to secure timely market access and reimbursement definitely will hinder the drug uptake. I can leave the others to you, Steve. I know you have a lot to add.
I mean, I would say Abby completely hit the nail on the head. It truly has to be not working in silos. We have to find a way to not work in silos and work across cross-functional alignment with the patient in mind. We have to do a much better job as an industry with understanding what that patient's journey is like. And I would add also caregivers. So it's not just patients, but it's patients and caregivers. More and more processes like Alzheimer's disease require a caregiver to navigate what can be a very difficult experience for a loved one. And then the system can be very difficult. So I'd say those are the things. And then Abby hit it on the head for my market access piece. Of course, market access is really important, that we find ways to gain access to the products that are life changing.
Just to go ahead and go forward to our keys to remember, this is a summary again of all of the keys that we've gotten and received from our expert speakers today on the strategies for a successful launch. I want us to move forward to our question and answer section here at the end, only because I see some pretty good questions that have come in that we could go ahead and answer here in our last 15 minutes. So I'll go ahead and bring down our slides so we can address our first question. Christine asks, when pre-approval meetings with payers, who outside of trade directors should market access and MSLs begin meeting with? Abby, I saw your hand.
So, like for the trade directors, I'm not sure I'm getting it correct. Like, right?
That's trade and distribution. So, besides the trade and distribution people, so and that's a great question, and I think about this, and I would say what you want to start doing as a patient advocate, starting to meet with your payers, understanding patient advocates. There's a number of companies that have these roles that potentially could add to the story when it comes to market access. Those are the main ones, I would say. Christine, you kind of captured it.
Elaine asks, what aspects of market research should medical affairs focus on pre-launch?
Actually, I can take this. I would say the unmet medical needs. So identifying the gaps in the current treatments, understanding the needs of the patients, healthcare providers as well, competitive landscaping. This could be also something that could be covered. Stakeholder insights is key. Gathering insights from our like therapy area experts, rising stars, payers, like patients, caregivers, understanding their expectations, concerns, challenges that they have been facing before. What are like the opportunities or what they are aiming for to be tackled. This is something that could be there. I mentioned before around the market dynamics, how big is the market, the potential, like the cross potential. Also, the patient journey, where are the challenges across the patient journey? How can we make it a seamless experience? So by defining or identifying the real pain points across the journey would be potential when it comes to our launch or pre-launch readiness. HEOR, what Steve mentioned as well. Yeah, this is actually on top of my mind now. I would say also currently with the different channels, communication channels that we are using. So what is the optimum channel for each of our stakeholders to be able to do this kind of a tailored engagement approach? So yeah, these could be the aspects of market research.
Yeah, the only other thing I would really add to it is the real world evidence of the patient, like what actually is really going on with the outcome of the patient. I think that's the other important thing. So you captured most of it, Abby. I'm easy sitting back and listening.
Can MSLs collaborate and contribute to the commercial team indirectly for a successful launch? If yes, how?
Actually, it shouldn't be indirectly. It should be directly.
Yeah.
Like MSLs, they are integral for a success of every launch, because they are the faces of the disease area, product, pre-launch readiness, educating the disease area community, bringing insights to feed in the strategy and inform it. Yeah, so it's everything. Like it shouldn't be indirectly, for sure. MSL is key for the successful launch.
Yeah, MSLs, I would agree. I would think that they need to be included in everything, because the MSLs get that patient specific insight, and they're able to bring it to the market access team to talk about, what does this disease process do, and then the payers start to understand, okay, how are we going to manage it? So it's across the board. And again, I would agree with Abby. It doesn't need to be indirectly. It should be directly.
It's directly for the successful pre-launch, launch, and post-launch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From Sheila, can you comment on internal patient advocacy teams and how they work with the rest of the teams?
In my experience, they are present, proactive, to be honest, like bringing patient voices always, and making sure that there's a mindset that everyone is having. It's not them that like bring the patient voices, but everyone should. So yeah, they work closely with the commercial team, the R&D team. So yeah.
I've seen it varied. I've seen some companies that do it fantastic. I've seen some companies that have a patient advocacy lead. They engage with major advocacy groups. They go out and do roundtables. I mean, they are really active. And some organizations don't do anything. So I've led a patient advocacy role in a previous organization, and it was really fantastic. And you gained some really interesting insights, and some of them might not be directly about the drug. It might be for something that's a condition that you need to address, but it does affect the drug's uptake. So the insights from patient advocacy groups and patient advocacy representatives within a company are fantastic.
From Valeria, can you talk about a specific strategy, medical affairs, you previously used that transcribed to success, and how did you define success?
I would say here is like having this cross-functional integrated strategy is key. Like working in siloed would not come with to the benefit of the drug launch, for sure. Reflecting on one of my experiences, to be honest, when there was there's always the commercial medical competition thing before, to be honest, it's not now. Having this common ground and transparency and open discussion to make things better is key. So cross-functional collaboration, alignment on the strategy, and yeah, making sure that this is really streamlined and unified. So this is for the specific strategy that I would say can lead us to success.
I've always seen the MSL, being arm in arm with the payer account rep and going into the payer account reps together. That always seemed to have an impact on a plan. It really did. It changed the plan's way that they would manage a product. I've got a number of different examples in my career where that has happened. So it's that collaboration, that Abby talks about. So.
Yeah. So for the other part of the question, how we define the success, I would say it is the advocacy that we see when it comes to our HCP advocacy level, the uptake of the product, patients also and caregivers insights on how do they see their experience with the product so far. It's everything around. It's not specifically something that we should be ticking. It's not about sales only. Also, we shouldn't be tying up the success of the product launch with sales thing. The access, for sure, making sure that the product is accessible to everyone who is in need to be treated with this product also is really key.
Yeah. She answered my question for me.
From Mohammed, What is the ideal approach for a successful product launch? Is it top to bottom approach or bottom to top approach?
Eddie, I'll take this to start. I believe it's a bottom-up approach. I believe that it's almost like I would begin with the end in mind. Mohammed is how I would think about it. And the end is the patient. If you can build the patient, build the experience that your patient's going to have on the product, you build it and you design your patient services, you design your access, you design your clinical trials. I would always say that it probably is, in my individual opinion, it's probably a bottom-up approach.
Same here. Same here. Yeah, understanding like the needs from our patients and making sure that we are tackling these needs through the products, services, like outputs that work on the experience to be like seamless on all aspects is coming from the bottom top approach for sure. Our power, or the power of the pharmaceutical companies, should be coming from the field.
And our last question from Christine. At what point should a budget impact model be introduced to IDNs and payers? Does that have to be after approval?
Oh no, that needs to be before approval. They need to do it before they even set a price. I mean, we talked about Ebby and I had a discussion earlier. We talked about a product within the MS market space, and that's all I'm gonna say about where it lies. But the company was really aggressive about their pricing in a conservative way. Meant they wanted to price it based on what the actual needs of the patient would be. So that research started well before launch, and you looked at what the cost was going to be. You looked at what the actual economics were going to be for the patient, and what the patient out of pockets were going to be, and that all happens way before launch. So that's an important piece of the whole discussion early on.
Okay.
That concludes our last question for today's webinar, just in time for us to go ahead and close out today's webinar. I'd like to thank first all of our attendees for joining and participating in today's discussion. Again, the goal of today's session was for you to walk away with a deeper understanding of these common pitfalls to avoid. We even came up with a few in some of your questions that you asked at the end. And also for you to walk away with some strategies for a successful drug launch, getting a little bit more insight from experts who have seen successful drug launches. Next, I would love to thank our experts. I learned so much. I was able to connect a little bit more of dots that I didn't previously. I hope it was the same for our speakers. I really appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you. I made a new friend in Egypt, so that's really happy for me.
Same here. And thanks a lot for the opportunity. I would say, being in contact with Steve, realized that we have lots in common, except we are living in 2 different continents.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I love that. And hopefully our attendees as well, they have that same experience, right? They're hearing something that's very familiar to them in their role, but they're learning a little bit more no matter where they are. And with that, I'll close today's webinar. Everyone, please have a great rest of your day, evening, wherever you are located. Please tune into our next webinar. This webinar, the slides itself and the recording will be shared with you in case you'd like to go back and recap anything that we've discussed today. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Yeah.